Whole Soul School and Foundation's Good Vibes Broadcasting and Literacy Chats. And I'm here and back again today with Renee Taintor. Welcome, Renee, and Diane Jackson. Thank you, Diane, for joining us. We have been seeding this awareness in our listeners. I want to welcome our listeners as well to this podcast today, because as we continue to journey deeper into the hero's journey, right? We are called in the journey to expand our vision, right? To see from a much bigger picture, vision and lens of our lives. And what happens as we're expanding our vision, we're also seeking tools that can support that bigger vision. And our language is a critical tool for that bridge across the chasm between who we've been, this older version of us, and this newer version of us, right? Who we're becoming and who we're striving and desiring to be. And so our language is a critical part of who we are. And it's often either taken for granted, or we just don't really understand how powerful our words are in creating our world. And I think we've talked in a previous literacy chats together, the three of us, that it's been said that our word is our wand, right? Our language is our wand, right? And I love how Diane's kitty cat is joining us. You know, there's this universal language that goes on too, right? That animals feel. We're probably speaking in this podcast. We think we're speaking to only humans, but we're also speaking to all the animals, right? All of nature. When we're in a higher vibrational, higher consciousness conversation like this, we touch the world, and that's how we have this ripple effect of making the world a better place. And already it's with the words that we've chosen to use, right? We're using this language to help the hero rise in their journey. And for anyone listening today, we're speaking to you, right? And we're sharing the messages that are in our hearts to help you expand your vision of your life, your own self-awareness, your understanding of yourself as a divine being, as a sacred soul, as a human in a rising hero's journey, right? And I first want to seed the conversation as we're talking about language, we're talking about that bigger picture vision, we're talking about more conscious language, bigger picture language. I've been really feeling how metaphor and symbols also enrich our awareness, right? In the hero's journey, in our journey to become our authentic selves. And I think that's why so many of us have grown up reading books with these like heroic tales and these amazing characters, right? And we love going to movies and watching Star Wars or Harry Potter or The Lord of the Rings. And just when you think your heroic character is like knocked down and out of the game, somehow they find the strength inside to rise up, come back and win the day. And in all the symbols of those characters, that's us, right? And it makes me think of the symbols and the metaphors in our language and the writings that we have. And that is Diane's cat. Oh, wait, that's not Sophie, is it? Who? That's
It's Leah.
Leah. So Leah's stretching into our conversation, and it's so beautiful, and even kind of patted your lips about language, right? They're right here.
Well, when you first said language,
yes,
she came and jumped in my lap and she looked at you and meowed.
Wow. This is like a universal language, and we're talking about the language of sentience now, because that's the language that the animals speak, right? We're all tapped into that. That's a language. Look, she's saying yes. That's her vote. She's saying yeah, right. That's love that. Leah is so precious.
She felt the vibration of it. She felt the vibration of the language.
Got the vibration.
Yes,
and wants to be included.
And wants to be included.
Yeah.
Yes. Did you want to say something, Renee?
No, I just said, she said, I second that.
Oh, yes, she does. She's totally like, she's like, yes, you've got my vote. I'm right here with you. And as we have, so let's also introduce Leah in our podcast as a messenger today. So it's Renee Taintor, Diane Jackson, Leah Jackson, and Marie Mohler here hosting this podcast. And you have other cats as well with you, Diane. And we're all carrying our animals with us in our consciousness in these communications. And we're evolved enough to know that. And we'd invite our listeners to know that you carry your animals with you in your lives. And so if we're thinking about the energy of metaphor and we're thinking about transcending these times that we're all living in, where it's tremendously challenging for some people, right? And we're all going through this time of being asked to see deeper, see clearer, speak maybe bigger, speak our truth, right? How many of us have been living where we've been more suppressed or repressed, where we want to hide our light, we don't want to be who we are? It helps when we can also incorporate symbology, symbols, and metaphor, and stories, and music. And music is something that also resonates with us, not only because of the octaves of the frequencies and the sounds, but also the lyrics in those songs, because they're telling a story. And we get to pay more attention in these times of what are we listening to? What's the language we're resonating with? Maybe we listen to music or watch movies just because we've watched them and listened to them for so long, they're familiar, but maybe they're not really supporting your hero's journey to go to the next level. So it helps us to decode. I love Leah. She's doing such a good job of saying, yes, 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 you're on the right track. Keep going, right? And her paw is her wand, right? She's waving the wand and saying, you guys are doing great. The metaphor essence, which I actually looked up a definition because I couldn't call one out. I know how it feels to me, but I looked it up and here's a definition. A metaphor is a figure of speech that describes an object or action in a way that isn't literally true, but helps explain an idea or make a comparison, right? And I think we are living, we have so many metaphors. We talk about the rising hero's journey. Now, to me, that can be metaphorical of a hero literally rising. We can think of that as a metaphor of like the characters in our stories, or we can literally be those heroes who are rising in our daily experiences in our lives. And I think we're called in that looking deeper, seeing bigger, speaking more clearly, to look at the language of the things we tap into, the music, the stories, the conversations we have with ourselves and others. And I wanted to give you guys a chance just to reflect a little bit about that and see if you have something to share. And then I have a couple little kind of stories to illustrate what these seeds of what we're talking about today, how language can empower and liberate, and language can also incarcerate. And when we use the power of metaphor and symbols and the power of our language in a much more consciously creatively way, we are on our way to building that bridge to living the bigger picture vision and the bigger version of us that we all truly desire to experience. Even if right now somebody listening to this is saying, well, that's not me. I feel pretty trapped and entangled in my life and I don't see a way out. Keep listening to podcasts like this, because we're seeding in our language that you're hearing, that's inviting you to step up in a bigger way and to find the ways, through the ways we're going to illustrate in these conversations, that it's not only accessible and possible, but it's meant for all of us, right? So any idea, any reflections that you guys have on some of what I've shared today? Does it bring up anything for you guys?
Well, the first thing that popped up in my mind was, I love what you said about the language of incarceration versus, I think, the language of freedom, the language of sovereignty, because I think so much of what's happening now is the language of incarceration, a lot of it. And that is a mindset, that is a mind program. And I love what Renee was saying before we came on too, about how this is a conscious choice of what you choose, what language are you going to choose, because we're always talking to ourselves a lot more than we're saying out loud and talking to other people. And I don't think that people consciously listen to themselves very often, because most people are so interactive and doing whatever they're doing with work or whatever. And so I think one of the things I think is a really good tool to do right off the bat is to really, I started like a journal about that. What's my languaging during the day? What's coming up for me? And just getting a noticing that is really important, because it's like the energy too, and the intention behind the words. It becomes really important to notice that connection, because that's really going to take you down either the road of feeling good, or maybe the road of not feeling so good. And that's being very simplistic about it, but I think it's that noticing, it's that paying attention to what is my self-talk, what am I languaging with myself today. And I love what Renee said too, because I think we need to be having more God talk, more God conversations.
Yes.
And are we consciously doing that every single day and listening to what God is saying to us? And really starting to write about that and to think about that. So that, because I think people have so many unconscious mind patterns that are driving them, as you said earlier, Renee. And if you never take the time to become conscious of that, you're never going to change it.
I think there's a big difference. I totally agree with you, Diane. And the difference is becoming self-referenced, because
yes,
self-referenced, my definition is it's the inner reference of yourself.
I love that.
The outer reference of yourself has to do with when you go into the grocery store, you know, your friends, your activities and stuff. But the inner life and the inner awareness, you know, a lot of people don't know that they're stuck in that lower mindset, because you don't know what you don't know. And how do you tell someone, well, you're stuck in your mindset? No, I'm not. Well, if they don't know what the mindset is, for one. And, you know, I was saying earlier that I recognize that if you're feeling any of those negative emotions, which nobody likes, you know, fear, doubt, anger, revenge, anxiety, and any of those things, you are being led by your lower mind, because that's not what you would choose. Would you? No, you don't want to feel that. And a lot of people think they have no choice but to feel that, because they keep repeating the same patterns and reactions, and they're not self-aware. And like you said, Diane, you need to look at your self-talk and say, look, some of these thoughts, I don't want them. Well, did you know you could get rid of them? You just go, you know what, that isn't me. These thoughts, not mine. But they come into your mind, and like, who is that wise guy from forever ago that said, you can't prevent the birds from flying over your head, but you can prevent them from building a nest in your head.
I've never heard that before.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I like it.
And so that's thoughts. That is thoughts. Now, I'm going to give you this. I was sharing this with Marie one time. I ended up having to move us out of the Las Vegas area by myself. My husband got transferred, blah, blah, blah. And so I had all these thoughts. You got to do this. You got to do this. And I was just trying to float in the pool and relax. And Spirit gave me this vision of me. I'm the egg, And the million thoughts around me are the sperm going, you need to do this. You need to give me energy. You need to stop everything right now and focus on this. We need to think about this right now. Forget everything else. And if the million of them are doing that. And I had already known about, the certain thoughts I don't want, because I am self-referenced, because I did want to become aware of, are those thoughts making me feel good or not? And if they're not, you can do something about it if you know what the tools are. And that's what we were talking about. The self-talk can tell you, you know what, I'm kind of not really in control right now. I'm feeling all these emotions. Let's back up till the picture is big enough for you to respond and react the way you want as a conscious creator. Let's go, okay, when did I start activating these thoughts? Well, probably yesterday. And so let's just back up and clean house and start all over. And when I was in the pool and all these thoughts, I said, back off. And I literally had I said it out loud, back off. And I literally had this vision of me, the egg, and this big space between me and all these little thoughts, just waiting. They had this barrier. And I said, I will get to you when it's time. I'm in charge here. So I will pick the thoughts. And so you learn, like we were talking about language, which thoughts are going to support you, which thoughts are going to kick you when you're down. The lower mindset, we know, has the thoughts that aren't going to help you. They don't reflect the light and love. The divine and the heart mindset will say, oh man, girl, you're tired. Why don't let's just sit down. Let's make a cup of tea. You're doing good. You got a lot on your plate. Let's just, and that kind of self-talk coming from the heart is what nurtures you and leads you out of that fog of the lower mindset. I mean, were we ever taught this?
No.
No. I've learned it on the plane because I was curious about how I would feel so good driving down and getting to the airport, getting on a long flight, 15 hours, and just feeling good. And then something would happen and I would go, I'm not feeling so good right now. So I started seeing, what is that? Well, it's usually a reaction with another human being because you're in a sea of humanity. So having the tools to navigate through your inner self and the language, which has a lot to do with language, instead of going, you're such an idiot. Right. That's the fourth time you've done that. You would say, oh man, it's okay, we got this, or whatever the words come from your heart. You almost treat yourself like you would your best friend or your child. It's okay, let's sit down and think about this. Let's talk about this.
That's because one of the things I like to do is to say, who's saying that? Who is saying that?
That's good, because you're looking for the reference. You're looking for the root cause of that, the origin.
Yes, because it could be your wounded child. It could be the saboteur. It could be, whoever. And I'll say, come on out. I love what you said, Renee. It's like, come on, sit down, let's have some tea and talk about it. So, because I think one of the important things too about this languaging is you don't want to suppress this.
No.
Because it's just going to come back even bigger. And so I think that's this kind of languaging is it when you hear those kinds of words and things, it's an opportunity to say, hey, I'm offering you an invitation. Come sit and have some tea with me and let's talk about this. I want to give that a voice and see what is that part of me that is so desperately trying to get through to me. What is it you have to say? I'm listening.
That's perfect, because then you end up developing a relationship with that other part of you. I call the lower mind little Renee, and then the divine mind, divine Renee or whatever. And then in the beginning, I would I was, sorting this out, I would just say to little Renee, you just don't sugarcoat it, let it out. Just speak what's going on. And then, then I would get an earful and then I'd go, are you done? Are you done? So when you realize that you will be allowed to express yourself, no matter what it is, that you don't have to hide any of yourself to yourself. Because the heart is in the driver's seat, and the heart isn't going to knock you when you're down or judge you or have negative words for you. The heart is going to nurture you, lead you, guide you, and heal you. And when you have that confidence, because you've got the voice, not just the divine voice and the ego voice, you've got your parents' voices, you've got your friends' voices, your kids, you've got everybody's voice in there, and you need to be in charge of that.
Absolutely.
And when you realize that you've got this nice relationship, that you can trust yourself, that you're going to allow yourself to express, you may not know what to do or how to handle it, but you're getting it out there, and then you're turning it over to the heart. Because I would say to little Renee, yeah, that's good. It's good. I'm glad you shared that. I totally get it. I feel it. Of course you feel it, because it's you, right? But then I just say, my heart, we're going to respond from the heart. The heart is the place from which we will always respond, because it is the highest place. And then you do that for so many years, then the other voice doesn't really feel the need to express that much, because your picture has expanded. And you're not judging yourself, because you've been nurtured and led and fed, and you're not judging others, because now you can see the divine in them, and you just know everybody is a divine human. Most of the time they operate from their lower self. That's how it is. But if when you live from your heart wants to be that light. Your heart wants to express that light all the time. And when you do that, you just live in that heart-led life. And the ego won't respond so much, because it feels better to live in your heart. It actually transforms the energy around you wherever you are. And I think that's what people like us do, because all the times that we have talked, we have never once had any negative, nasty conversation about another living soul. It's always been love and compassion and understanding, inner standing, and wanting the highest for everything and everybody in creation. And that's the heart. You don't get that in your mind. And once you realize that I want to hang out there. I'd rather hang out there, because you don't have those things that eat you up every day, that the anxiety and the worry, the fear, the doubt, the unknown, the not knowing what to do. And the language we use from our heart are the tools we use when we don't know what to do, when we are in the unknown, when we are a little afraid. You just lean on those tools, like, no, you trust the process, trust God, trust your heart, trust and those are the things that help you let go and disengage from that energy game of the lower mind.
I love what you both reflected so beautifully. And if people are listening, not only to what you're saying, but also to the metaphors that we've shared here as well, because I'm still feeling the energy of the egg and the sperm, that you had that insight, which not everybody's necessarily thinking that way, but that was your picture that came to you in a time where you were in a sea. It sounds like you were literally in a pool. Yeah, you were literally in a pool of overwhelming waters, and that imagery, those metaphors came to you to show you how many millions of thoughts were trying to vie for your attention all at the same time, and there's only one Renee to do those millions of things. And
metaphor and a tool. So it increased my understanding to go, okay, I'm the one in charge and you guys back off. And I think that's what you do in meditation, is you want things to back off so that you can be in that stillness.
Right. And isn't it amazing though, if you take that metaphor, I don't know if you've thought about this, but you take that metaphor a little further in the stillness. So you got the egg, the sperm, and now you added some stillness because you were a creator by creating that back off moment to give yourself a still point to feel what was next. Then you had the time to allow that conception of new ideas and new creativity to come in, and then you became that conscious creator instead of your life creating itself in the overwhelm by saying, basically, in a way, again, if people can bear with this metaphor, you're going to take one sperm at a time, right? One idea, one conception at a time is what I can handle. Right. And that's true of most people. But what I hear, that was a whole metaphorical illustration of being a conscious creator. You had to get your egg ready to receive and in a place of balance so that that sperm could come in and fertilize the new creation of the next step you were going to take. And that's how, there's a literal situation we're talking about, how perfectly this presented itself, that you are in a pool completely overwhelmed with a move and a millions of things that you had to do to get ready on your own to move your family. And at the same time, we have the metaphor of the insight that came to you at that time that illustrates an even bigger picture that gave you that breath and that pause. And once your spirit, your higher self, the divine Renee, was communicating with the little Renee in that experience, you were able to expand your vision and find the still point and see the sperm, instead of as attacking you, all the things you had to do and feeling so overwhelmed, they actually could partner with you, but you had the insight also to pace the conception of those tasks and that creativity and that creative energy you have, so that your move could go in an orderly, organized, balanced way. You still had to move, but you could have been the overwhelmed Renee in the small picture of things, or you could have been the more like breathing, conscious creator Renee, who found her way through that probably in a more peaceful way.
The beauty of the heart-based living is that your heart has its own consciousness, and you partner with your heart, and you have these 85 things you have to do. And then instead of you freaking out about, okay, well, which one should I do first? Well, I should probably do these 10 things today. But I learned that when you partner with your heart already knows you have 185 things to do. Right. And then you go with this flow of energy, and it's like, it might not be at all the order you thought you'd be doing it in, but because this has happened to me so many times, where you kind of like, you just project what you need. I need to move, and little things, I need to get these things done today, and then you rest. Because otherwise you go, okay, I need to get these things done today. You're already anxious. You need to like deep breath and enjoy the dance and be led. Like you were on your way to do the laundry, you got a phone call, and then you did the phone call, and then you went over here and did this. Well, that is going to get done too, but it's hard to explain. But when you're in that flow, the heart leads you. You just get led. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you don't have to really think about it, because your heart is the one that's doing it.
Because the heart intuits, the heart sees that bigger picture. It's the heart's vision that is bigger picture and that is empowered and sovereign. And it's the ego that is afraid, because that's the part of us that has been incarcerated. That's the part of us that gets conditioned into the reality that we've been living. But it's the heart that says, is that reality? Is that the reality that you want to be living in? And it's the heart that will invite you to see bigger and to understand the power of choice that you have in your life. And one of the first things I think, if we think back to like how kids develop and us as children, I remember, and I remember witnessing this when I was with my cousins and I was much younger, and I was like 7 or 8, and my cousin was like 3 or 4, maybe. And I watched my grandmother give my cousin choices. Like she was giving out money, right? And she was giving out change, basically. It might have been $1, right? And she gave me 4 quarters. But my little cousin, who was all about having more, 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 my grandmother was very creative and said, well, you can have this 4 quarters, or you could have all of these and had like 100 pennies, which looks like more to a little kid, right? And the power of choice my grandmother gave to my cousin, very powerful, right? And I think we're rediscovering that as people who've been conditioned into the lives that we've lived. And we've been a part of that conditioning because we didn't know we had the power of choice. But language is also another way that we express our freedom of choice and our sovereignty through our choices. I think there's some quote in Harry Potter that Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts, the wizard school, for anybody that remembers that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and Harry's pretty concerned that he might have abilities or something kind of from the dark side of wizardry, right? The serpent side, the Slytherin side of creation. And Dumbledore says to him, basically, it's not necessarily, I can't remember exactly how he says it, but like our origins or where we come from, it's our choices that make us who we are. So while you might have this DNA, or you might have this dis-ease, or you might have this boss, or this financial struggle you're in right now, but that doesn't define you. Your choices are what make you who you are. And language is a very powerful choice that people often overlook. They don't realize that that word is their wand. And if they would speak to themselves more compassionately, and when a shadow part of themselves does pop up and want to express or go on a rant or complain or judge somebody else, if we with ourselves would give ourselves that moment, like you suggested, Diane, with our journal, or you, Renee, like inviting it to the table and let's have some tea for a minute, right? Let's have this conversation. It doesn't have to be thrust out into the world as a creation. It can be a witnessing when it's with ourselves. And there's a lot of power that we have in that. And when, even if somebody's right in front of us that might be ranting or judging us or projecting on top of us, and we're feeling overwhelmed, the more you realize that one of your first sacred powers is the power of your voice, the power of what you sound as a creation into the world. When we can be conscious and grounded and present enough, we can just take a breath before we fire off those words that could be an attack back, or that could also be something that neutralizes or empowers the situation to have a whole different outcome. And I think it's so beautiful that we can bring this consciousness into people's awareness, because I just don't think it's talked about enough. Even in the spiritual circles of people in the awakening process, they're aware that they can manifest things, they can set their intentions. A lot of people play with that because that certainly is a whole lot of fun to manifest the things that you want. But there's a lot of people who just take the good part of that and like, oh, I'm not really going to deal with the shadow parts of me that also need some conversation, right? It's really allowing ourselves to A, recognize the power of words, B, recognize the broader picture of the power of language, and then really seeing ourselves, are we going to be an unconscious creator or a conscious creator? And conscious creators choose. Conscious creators choose their responses, they choose their language, they choose their words, and they do manifest their life through the sounds and the words that they're creating. And at first, you might just need to be a witness to those thousands or millions of thoughts we're having that can be overwhelming. But like you said, Renee, as you took a pause and you're floating in that pool and you said, get back off for a second, right? you got some perspective in that stillness. And then you were more prepared as a conscious creator to say, okay, I'd like an organized line. And just like in kindergarten,
I will call on you.
right, and I will call on you one by one by one. And then that's when your heart takes over and leads the invitation process. And maybe it's the 10th one in line that you say, oh, you there, and 10 rows back. I want you to step forward because I just got the guidance that you're who I'm going to hear today. And let's really have it. Yeah.
I think people need to be aware that they give life to the thoughts in the lower mind and in the higher mind.
Completely.
And the way you do that is with attention. And one of the things I learned early on is the law of the universe, like attracts like. So if you make a mistake and then you go, oh, I'm such an idiot, and you hold that thought long enough, here comes 1,000 more that will support it.
Yes.
Because like attracts like, and you can test this in your own life. It works, and it also works with positive thoughts. If you go, oh, it looks like you're having a bad day, let's take a pause. Let's not beat ourselves up. Let's be our own best friend. And then you hold that because you speak it out loud or whatever. You hold that thought long enough, and then these other thoughts come and support that. So people need to be aware that they give life to those thoughts. And so you have a bunch of thoughts out there that are accustomed to you giving them life, like talking about people or bringing up the same person that you need to bash again, or what, all those things, they're accustomed to it. So if they pop in your mind, instead of you saying, no, I don't want to give life to that, it's there. So you just take it. You just go with it and act on it. And then more thoughts come. And that's how people stay stuck in that lower mindset. I've seen it happen. I've tried to talk to friends and say, you need to be aware of the thoughts that you're continuing to give attention to. Right. Because otherwise, and they bring up the emotions. Because if you're going, oh, okay, let's just take a break. And you take a deep breath. Now, what do you feel? You're feeling, okay, I'm resting. This feels better than I was a second ago, feeling anxious and all that. So these thoughts are going to help you rest and nurture you. The other ones are going, I don't know why I keep doing that. And, and she doesn't help because blah, blah, blah. And, and all. And if my boss was different, it doesn't stop. It won't stop until you stop it. You need to become that conscious creator and recognize you're in charge or you're not. And if you're feeling all those negative emotions, you are not in charge. Your mind is running you. And that's the truth. And I think people, even without a lot of this knowledge or having heard it very much, can identify with that.
They can see the repeated patterns. They can see it keep playing out again. If they would look and say, gosh, I thought it was just my spouse, but boy, my mother annoys me, right? Or my boss, gosh, he does the same thing. And when you do have that witness observer and say, where else does this play out? Am I feeding this to play out in my life? Where else am I empowering this to keep playing on as a song that never stops in my life? When you do see it, and the common denominator is you, whether you are a conscious creator or unconscious creator, the common denominator is you're the creator.
And that's to give yourself the choice. Realize if you don't like feeling that, stop.
Yes.
But all you have to do is go in your mind and look at those thoughts.
Yes.
What were you going to say, Diane?
I didn't mean, are you finished? I didn't want to interrupt your flow there. It's always so good.
Yeah.
Okay. From the standpoint of neuroscience, the ideas, and not that I'm an expert on this, but I have really studied it some and practiced it because it has such pragmatic application in terms of our spirituality, our thoughts, and that sort of thing, because from a neuroscience standpoint, we create our habits of thinking and being. We create a neural network in our brains that supports that way of thinking or that habit or that mind pattern.
Wow.
And as Renee said, if you are not doing anything to change that, then you're going to continue to operate from that same habit or mind pattern. And as you pointed out, Marie, it's generic. It's across, it applies to every single thing in your life. And I think that one of the ways that you can really tell about what kind of neural networks you've created are when you listen to your self-talk and what I learn a lot when I listen to other people talking in terms of what's the story that you're telling about yourself, right?
Good one.
What's the story? Because everybody's telling a story about themselves. And what language are you using? What referential language are you using? What symbols come up for you as you're telling the story? Because that is going to tell you what kind of neural network you've designed that is supporting that. And the cool thing is, there's such an easy way to change that, because people will say, yeah, I get all that, but what do I do to change it? Well, in order to create a new neural network, you play with new language and new feelings, and you tell a different story, so that now you're doing this multisensory kind of approach that you're going to build a new neural network based on the kinds of things that you want to say and that you want to feel. And you don't have all these little ghosts floating around haunting you all the time, and maybe sneaking in and doing these little psychic attacks when you don't see it coming. And all it really takes is, as Renee and you said, it's this attention to, first of all, just taking a look at what is my language telling me about my neural network, and what is it about that I would like to change. And the wonderful thing about this kind of change is that it can be playfully, it can be fun. So it's not like, oh, more spiritual work for me to do. Okay, back in the trenches again, kind of thing. No, it's not that. In fact, the more that you generate the good feelings, the joy, the happiness, the satisfaction, and the languaging and the visuals that go along with that, you can change that network really quickly into something that supports that coming from the heart and living from the heart, and not feeling like you're sometimes victimized by that ego mind, even though you're doing your very best to not be a victim of that. Sometimes if you listen to yourself talk, you realize you've fallen into that well again.
That's when your awareness says, oh, you look at what you're feeling.
Yes.
So if you're feeling any of those negative emotions, then you activated those thoughts from the lower mind. And then you just go, oh, okay, switching directions. And I like what you said about it can be playful, because one of the things about accepting my humanity when I was learning it was a particular one-liner, two actually, that when you do something human, one of them is, oops. I didn't mean to do that. And then you laugh, and then you can tell on yourself, and then you lighten the load. It's like, look around. You're not the only one that's human.
Yeah, around. And I'd say,
you're not the only one.
Be like the cats who, when they do something, like they'll jump and they'll miss what they were going for, and they look at you like, I meant to do that. Yeah. So that's what we should do. It's like, hey, I meant to do that. I'm learning
see it again?
from that.
Right. Well, yeah, and then the other one-liner is, I feel so human. And so those two one-liners, you just go and it lightens a load. And then along with your heart thoughts that have higher vibration and frequency, because we like to talk about frequency, you're an idiot has a lower vibration than you're doing so good.
Yes.
So you want to find those thoughts. In the beginning, I was writing thoughts down on a list. And if I couldn't get out of that lower mind, I would start reading them and read them slow. You know, you got this. You have a good heart. You are a good person. You are a child of God. And you literally change the wiring in your mind, because isn't it, if you fire it, you wire it?
Yep.
Yes.
So it might take a little time, but it's not that hard. You just focus on other thoughts. And the key is becoming aware. And if you're aware of your feelings, you don't like what you're feeling, then you need to change what you're giving life to in that lower mind. Yeah, you might be facing a situation that's difficult, but if you step back, you still have the choice of how you're going to feel by how you choose your thoughts and how you choose to treat yourself and talk to yourself. Because you're the only one that can do that. I mean, you can, all your friends can support you, love you, give you all these thoughts, give you atta-girls and all that. But when you're by yourself, if you can't do that for you, and you're not self-referenced, and you're not giving your own self atta-girls and stuff like that, and support and nurturing.
And that's when it's time to engage some of these tools, especially like what you said, Diane, about the journal. As you said that, I felt that you could have a feeling journal that's a safe place for you to put the feelings, that when you have the tea with yourself, that you let yourself have that expression, and it's a safe place to put it in writing. For some people, you've got to let it out. But, and then also, almost like you both are saying, is having a list or a journal of the good words, of good vibrations, especially if somebody's not accustomed to choosing their words consciously, right? I know when I'm talking to people and someone says a word that I don't know, Spirit often gives me words that I haven't either ever used myself, or I don't really know the definition of. And I'll write it down, or I'll make special note of it, and I'll say, that's a really interesting word. We had a contractor, and we're still really good friends with him, and he used the word ubiquitous, right? He uses that in everyday conversation, and I was like, whoa, that's a great word, and I didn't even know what it was. Do you guys know what that word means?
Well, I know the word, but I couldn't tell you what it means. But it's a big word.
It's a big word, and I think it means like it's very commonplace, and there's a lot of it. Is that right, Diane?
No idea.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah,
something close to that. But at the time he said that, and I said, I don't know what that means, right? And you know, that's also admitting what we don't know. And some people might not know feelings and words like joy, or positive energy, or atta-girl, or, you know, it's okay to have a pause, or compassion. That's not part of their language, and that was not modeled for them at all. But if we could have a language journal that just starts writing down things of like, I'd love to use that word in a sentence to myself, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Or I heard these fabulous women in this podcast talking about these things, and I was able to extract some of their language, right? Even if it's about the neural networks, and which neural networks inside us are we feeding, right? What's the language that I'm choosing? What if my word is my wand? Those are things that can go in a notebook to help us remember, wow, I really am creating my life. And it does start with some kind of behavioral, feeling, emotional connection. You know, I somehow started when I would turn things around. And let me go back for just a second to say, in those neural networks, which story am I feeding? Which version of me am I feeding, right? Am I giving life to, like you said, Renee? I think we can think in terms of hydrating those things, right? Or dehydrating them, because that circuitry is going to be there. And, it's just like a plant. If you don't water it and give it sunlight, it will atrophy and it will turn to dust eventually. That's kind of what happens with the thoughts that are not really supporting our best version of ourselves, right?
They will eventually die because you're putting so much attention that you don't, I mean, you might have a shadow of an old reaction, but it's like so not in your vibration. You're not aligned with it at all. So it's going, hello, no. So, but I did, I also want to mention, I think it's very important because we're saying find the higher vibration words, but I also think, and the journal. And the journal. Good, but I think very important, be in nature and be with your animals. Oh, yeah. Because nature feeds you. Look at the birds, look at the trees and the leaves rustling in the wind, and look at the flowers. Sometimes I can go for a walk and there's a bush with all these tiny little flowers on it. I have to stop and sometimes get my glasses out and just go, look at you. You're just amazing. Look at, you got this tiny these little, and you're like connecting, but you're looking at this piece of creation that you just walk by mostly unconsciously. And then just be with your animals. I mean, you don't even have to say anything, just be with your animals. And that will help you feel the connection to all that is. Because when you get that heart connection will remind you on a daily basis, on a moment by moment basis, that you are connected, and it's beautiful. I even thank my printer. Wow, you have been so good to me. Thank you. It's an example of the gratitude I have for everything in my life, because it's all, one time God said to me, well, God is omnipresent. So that was one of my first God sentences that I put in my divine mindset. God is omnipresent. If you think about that enough, you will go on a journey in the universe, because everywhere you rest your eyes, you see God. I mean,
that is for sure.
Wow. That's a big picture perspective, right?
Because it all came from, in fact, this is what Spirit said. Picture the earth when it was a ball of gases, blah, 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 blah. It's just a ball of gas. Now picture it. Okay, you think you're not a creator? Look what we have done, humankind has done and built, and look at all the beautiful things, the artistic things, the cooking, the foods, and what we do with things, and perfumes and nuances, and how we decorate our house and our clothes, and how we decorate ourselves. It's a beautiful, huge, incredible dance that we're a part of. And then you can feel so connected to the smallest thing.
Right.
So true.
It is. I love how you actually reflected and brought us back to nature, right? Because wherever you are, whether you're not liking something in your life or you are feeling so good that you want to increase your experience of that kind of appreciation that you're describing, Renee, and nature has this way of mirroring to us just the most extraordinary things. And I don't know if it was Spirit or, if it just kind of downloaded for me, but like, trees don't worry about being trees, right? They just are, like your cats, Diane. They're not sitting here and saying, I don't know if I'm going to be a good cat today, right?
But will I be a dog tomorrow?
Right, exactly. But humans do this all the time, because I think our egos through time get confused, and there's so many mixed messages in our world. And if we aren't referenced from the inside out in who we are, and if we're not building, a sovereign, beautiful, appreciative, place inside ourselves for ourselves, it's easy for us to get really confused and then take in all the judgments and perceptions and things that other people give to us. And I love going into nature because the trees in my backyard, they absolutely know who they are, and they stand tall. And it can be the biggest storm comes through here. And you know, storms that we have big pine trees, and you can see the big pine trees really tall, right? Swaying. And we had big wind here the last 2 days. It's amazing. But the tree doesn't say, oh, I don't know if I can make it. You know, the tree just knows who it is. It stands tall, and it knows when to be pliable and flexible, and it knows when to ground. You know, it just is its strong roots in the ground. And there's a part of that reflection of nature which gets into metaphor, which takes us back into that place. And I wanted to see if I could read a writing that Diane Jackson so beautifully shared with me. We were just sharing back and forth. And I thought, oh, this would be a beautiful thing to read in our podcast, because it reflects a really beautiful energy and awareness of the higher, you know, that heart energy, that heart vision, that bigger picture vision of things inside us. And yet it's using the power of words in your writings. Do you even remember when you wrote this, Diane? Was it?
I don't. I just stumbled upon it.
It's amazing. And this is how you got to reflect the beautiful energy of you coming back into your conscious awareness, something you'd written whenever you wrote it, right? We also
Right.
have these moments. So this is the title of your writings here. It says, My Life as a Leaf. Each season brings a newness to my existence, which I am free to embrace or to resist. If I allow myself to flow into the changes, accepting them, even relishing them, I am able to blend smoothly with the energies. In the spring, I bask in an emerald sheen brought about by my mutual partnering with Brother Sun. As I bask in the vibrant resiliency of my being, I feel such power and strength as if I will endure forever. I have learned through many life cycles that how I choose to view the world is the key to my vitality and to my state of inner harmony. Others may see raindrops spilling onto the tree branches and feel sadness. I see the raindrops transforming my face into diamond-like prisms, reflecting back to me all that is good in my surroundings. I feel the immense grace that resides within me, being fully activated by the luminous presence of this liquid light. The wind may bring turbulent shifts with her changing moods. I embrace her moods, anchoring a space of infinite love, and she becomes my mellow friend. I have found that the natural world and all her inhabitants hunger to be understood for their service to mankind. In the summer, I mature into the fullness of my being, ripe and eager for fulfillment. My face shines with the expectation that Brother Sun and Sister Moon will assist my maturation into the fullness of who I am. I pride myself on my relationships with the other leaves of my tribe and how we all lovingly commit to the provision of shade for all beings. If I begin to perceive myself in smallness, Spirit reminds me that I am the provider of the breath of life for all beings. The Creator and I breathe as one, generating a lemniscus. Lemniscus?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read that again. Generating a lemniscus of brilliant light that holds the balance for Mother Earth and all who inhabit her. Fall blends my face with burnished colors. Mosaic patterns of gold and sienna form effortlessly as the Creator paints with precision and depth. There is a knowing inside that another more dramatic change will be coming soon, one in which my vibrancy begins to take on a different form. This physical change manifests in hues of amber, rust, and maize. My colors, still brilliant, yet very different, will have the appearance of what some call dying. In truth, it is merely moving into a sacred place of awaiting new life. This knowing allows me to be joyful as I fall from the tree into the welcoming arms of Mother Earth. I am freed by the trust that Great Spirit always brings me back into the greenness of yet another spring.
Wow,
So
girl.
beautiful.
Thank
So
you.
beautiful. And
It
there's
is.
so much like literal truth in that of the process of transformation, right? Through the eyes and lens and heart of a leaf and a leaf's life and lifespan and life experience. And also though weaving in the metaphor of the seasons and the things that the seasons and the colors and the stages of our lives teach us. It's so amazing when we can be a blending and integration of that literal truth and the metaphorical bigger picture vision that these stories and these expressions give to us. And that's what I'd like to invite our listeners into, of like looking literally and metaphorically into your life with bigger lenses. You know, how writers like you just wrote that so beautifully, Diane, and Renee Taintor writes also for Whole Soul School and Foundation, and you, these beautiful insights that stream, and we would both all, and I'm a writer, all of us would say there's a place inside us that writes from this deeper, you know, broader perspective lens of ourselves and mankind and this world. That's a part of ourselves that is in many ways untapped. And of course, as we know, as the cycles and seasons of humanity's evolution or devolution in its own way are descending into lower consciousness at times, we've squeezed out the arts in a lot of ways, you know, in the name of science, right? And advancing our intelligence. But we forget this artistic intelligence that's inside us that brings the richness of language and creation into our lives so we can live more aware and comfortable and empowered in our lives. And we need all of this. We need all the aspects of us, right? If we use academic subjects, we need math and science, but we need English and we need art and we need creativity. And language, when we play with language, we allow that symphony of language to come through us, especially if we take the time to grow these words. Like that was a new word for me, lemniscus, right? I'm going to
It's an infinity symbol.
Oh,
Oh, wow. That's what it's called, the infinity symbol?
the
Yeah.
I've
lemniscus.
never heard that. I've never heard that. So
I had never heard it either until I got that in part of a tarot card reading I had, and I thought, what is that? So I looked it up, and that's what it is.
See, and that's how we expand our language. Just by being in this together, we now know lemniscus, and that's the name for the symbol of the infinity symbol. So you have the words that matches the symbology that then expands our consciousness. And this is what we want to invite people into, expanding and living more this way, and inviting that inner artist to come through, right? And allow these words that we didn't necessarily know before, but when I hear them, like I didn't know the phrase heroic soul, the heroic soul, and Paul Panzica brought that into one of our conversations. But the minute he turned the light on that for me, it just completely fills my spirit. And when I think about the rising hero's journey, I also feel the heroic soul, which is that's the rising and risen hero. It's like the heroic soul that's rising to be all that they truly are, right? And when somebody just begins their hero's journey, they can often do so reticently, hesitantly, resistantly, like, you can't make me do this, right? But when they are this heroic soul and they're rising in this process, we just becomes like larger than life in a way inside, and a vitality. You write about this vitality in the life of a leaf, right? And I love how we can play with these words, and we can play in our journals, and we can make it be more playful, and we can say, I want to be sure that I'm feeling 5 appreciations a day, not to add to our to-do list, but it's something playful to say, how many things can I find to appreciate on my lunch hour, right? How many things can I find? Like you, Renee, you have said that so many times to me. You had some great story. I can't remember where you were traveling, but you were getting in your car. And I don't think I said this in the beginning of this podcast, but again, you know, Renee, you were a flight attendant for 36 and some, you know, years, which is really powerful. And Diane is an animal communicator and an energy healer, and also an audiologist. Your training, your background, right, is in speech therapy. And so we have that. And so when we bring our collection of talents together, and then you bring it into this place of artistic expression and creativity and conscious awareness. I love how, Renee, when you were going, I think on a flight somewhere, you said you were getting in your car and there was like this beautiful little teeny tiny flower growing up maybe out of your driveway.
Yeah, it was in the driveway.
It was in the driveway, and you stopped and you saw it and you paused, like you're busy, you're like going to work. Most people would have stepped on it or missed it, but not us, because when you learn to realize there's meaning in everything and nature's communicating with us all the time and reflecting our true nature. When you stopped, and I think, you know, you could probably tell the story better than I did, but you said something. Yeah, go ahead.
Every morning I would ask Spirit, what do you have for me today? And I would either hear a piece of a song or a word or something. And this day I heard, and miracles shall follow miracle, and wonders shall never cease. And that comes out of the Bible. And so, and sometimes that same thing would go for weeks and months. So it just opened my eyes to see wonders and miracles. And when I got ready to get in my car, I dropped my keys on the ground. And so I bent down to get them, and I saw this tiny little purple flower with a little flower and 2 tiny leaves. And I went, no way. So I had to get my glasses out, get on the ground and look at that wonder. And you open your eyes, you will see wonders everywhere. You just, you know, so that was pretty cool.
How amazing was it though? Like somebody else could be like, oh, I dropped my keys, that's going to make me late. And that whole, all that neural network in your head that's ready to fire and wire and, you know, say some things and begrudgingly have to grab your keys or whatever. No, you had already been seated with sort of being aware of miracle upon miracle. And when your keys dropped, you saw that. Also, you didn't rush off and say, you're really cute, but I gotta go. No,
Yeah.
you got your glasses and you looked closer and had this precious moment of appreciation.
And a connection to the flower.
And that connection to that flower, which is so amazing. And do you remember, I mean, I don't know if you do, because I'm sure that was some time ago, but do you remember, was your day touched by that experience? I'd imagine when I make time to like feel the wonder of nature, most things just glow a little brighter. My interactions are more fun and pleasant and playful and beautiful.
Well, you just open up your vision. It opens up your vision instead of like, how many of you go by and you see a dead tree or a dead weed? You don't even give it a second thought, but I go, I bet you were beautiful. You're still beautiful.
Oh,
I always say, whenever I see the logging trucks go by with the freshly cut trees, it makes me sad, but I thank them for their service.
yes.
So that they'll know, even with the animals that I see, and if I can, I will pick them up out of the road, the ones who've been hit, or move them or whatever. But I always thank them and bless them and say, I know I see your spirit dancing now, but thank you for coming here and gracing this earth with your presence, because I want them to know that they were noticed, that they were seen.
I do the same thing. I talk to them and tell them, go to the light, and I bet you were beautiful and all that.
The same. And like you said, Diane, if there's some animals, if they sometimes they run into windows or whatever. And you have used the language also, which has helped me, is that if they've been hit by a car or, you know, some unfortunate accident, but there's something about that's kind of their transportation back to spirit. And I help them if I can. I bury them in my yard, and I honor their life, and I thank them for their service, and I know how beautiful they are. It's extraordinary when you can be this very present, awake, aware instrument of the divine and part of the much bigger picture. And we're all an integral part of that. And we live that in our daily lives. And everything that we're saying here today, including the neural networks, which story are we feeding, you know, what language are we choosing, are we aware that we have the power of choice in our lives through our language, through how we show up each day, and our language is often a part of seeding how we're showing up in our lives each day. How are we talking with ourselves? We also have challenging days, the three of us. We all have things. We are human beings living in a very dynamic and very changing world right now. And it helps to be able to partner with language to increase our awareness, to be more conscious creators, that even if there is something sad or unpleasant or challenging or painful to see and to deal with, even if it's in our side ourselves, we do have the skills and the tools to honor those things. Yeah, go ahead.
And I think it's also important to know that your heart is your foundation. Your heart is God. It's your connection to all that is. It's your connection to the infinite wisdom, light, love, everything. And so, yeah, we can talk about all these beautiful things and challenges and stuff, but it's the dance of the divine human, and we have the tools. And when you have the tools, you can handle anything. And that's why we're here, because we know our foundation. We know grateful. We're grateful for it, and we're willing to share it.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of people that could sure benefit from knowing that they have choices and that they have powers in them that are untapped.
Yes, and ready to sparkle, frankly. They are ready to sparkle.
Yeah. It's I think that maybe part of the journaling, I think, is that would be an interesting and important thing to do, is to really become familiar with the languaging that comes from the heart, as opposed to the languaging that comes from the mind or the ego. Because I think that once you really start to me, writing it down, there's something about writing it down that really helps us in terms of it kind of sticking too. Because as Renee and you both have been saying, I mean, the language of the heart that's God speaking to you. That's your intuition speaking to you. That's your soul's GPS speaking to you. And I think if we start to kind of, even not, if you don't feel like you have time to journal, but just write down, so what's my heart saying to me? What are the symbols my heart is sending? What are the metaphors? What's the language? So that you really start to become so much more familiar with that languaging, because so much of that too is telepathic. It's not even verbal, a lot of it. And so that we want that to become our primary operating system, instead of, yeah, I do that sometimes and I pay attention to that sometimes, but that it becomes our default system. We don't think about it. It's just always operating.
First nature.
Nature. Yeah. It becomes. Yeah. Well, that's beautiful, because there's also this part of coming home in the conversation inside ourselves of integrating this as a part of us, as who we are, right? It's a way of how we move and flow in our day. And I know, we all know, when we were becoming more conscious ourselves, it's a practice that becomes you. And then it's something that you do, and you just call it up, and you do have these interactions with those flowers, or those conversations with the trees or the animals. in a way that does even transcend words. It's a deeper connection that words aren't even required at a certain point. But that's something that's many people listening to this may still be yet to discover, but it's a beautiful discovery process. And I just thought, as we round this out today, if I thought I'd put out there just for fun, do each of you have like a word that you love, that you find that you use a lot, or that's just something that resonates with your personality and your presence? Is there something that you would share that comes to mind that's just something that makes you feel good? It's a word that empowers you. Anything come to mind for either of you?
I say blessed humanity all the time, because I see humanity, I feel humanity, I pray for humanity, I'm in it, I react with humanity, I love humanity. And so I just say blessed humanity. It just covers everything.
Right. Beautiful. It is beautiful. Diane, do you have something?
Well, I always find myself saying heart hugs to people.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
I like that a lot too. And then, of course, it always comes back to the animals for me. I'll say it's perfect. PURRFECT, or it's policious.
Policious. I love it. See, and that's even being even more playful. You can feel the energy of the core root words, but then, to another living exponent, because when we play with it and we play with language like that, it elevates it to another level, and it becomes even, and it's even more vibrationally real to you, because you created those words, right? You felt those feeling energies. Yeah. It's so fantastic. And the animals, I feel they love, my dogs and cats, they love when we speak to them and we play vibrationally in this way with those words. A lot of people who follow me on my other channels know that I love the word epic. It's a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
It says so much. And I'm somebody who really loves the big picture, and epic is a big picture word. It reminds me to stay in the big epic picture. And another word that I love is luminous. I think there's something, right? You and I, yeah, especially Diane, we exchanged that language of luminous light, right? And luminous beings. We are. And if we've been Homo sapiens, and many people, some listening to this podcast, know we're in times of great change as a species, as a humanity, as a planet, that we're moving from Homo sapiens, some say, to Homo luminous. And I think language is also that bridge into our luminosity. That maybe is a podcast for another time, but we can see those word essences, the blessed humanity, the policious, the heart hugs, the perfection, and the epic nature of us as luminous beings, right? All those energies, somebody could just write those down in a notebook and have some seed starters in a journal for themselves, but you can play with it, and you could become willing. And when you're playful and willing, you have no idea the beautiful doors and things and opportunities and people that will open up into your experience, because you just went to a whole other vibrational level with your words and your consciousness. So I want to thank you both for joining me. I love our roundtables. I love our heart sharings. I love seeding these insights from our own journeys into other people's journeys to help inspire them. It helps to have these breadcrumbs from those who are just a little further in the journey than some other people who might be listening to this. And even if people are seasoned veterans in their own heroes' journeys, we are always learning from each other. We're the students and the teachers in infinity, right? And so I learned from you guys, and I know you learned from me, and we're all learning together. And humanity is learning and growing a great deal right now, because we have another level we're about to rise into as a consciousness. So thank you. Thank you for joining me today. And I want to thank our listeners for joining us in this podcast today. You can find more of our podcasts and this one on our website, wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org. You can find us on your favorite social media platforms. And we are these messengers of the rising hero's journey and the heroic soul's journey. And that is all of us. So until next time, we wish you all blessings, and we'll see you again soon for another podcast of literacy chats and more. Bye for now.